The lifeguard tower cast its shadow across the white sand as Madison Hayes stood frozen, her pale blue eyes fixed on the circle of girls surrounding her beach towel. One of them, a bronze goddess named Sienna, held Madison's floral swimsuit cover-up between two fingers, like it was contaminated, her voice carrying across the shore. "Did someone park a whale on our beach?" Laughter erupted. Madison's cheeks burned crimson against her blonde hair as tourists turned to stare at the commotion. Her hands instinctively moved to cover her soft stomach, her 265-pound body suddenly feeling exposed despite being fully clothed. She came to Paradise Cove to escape her corporate life in Chicago, to find peace in the ocean waves. Instead, she found herself at the center of a humiliation she thought she'd left behind in high school. But Madison Hayes didn't know that the man watching from the surf, the one every woman on this beach wanted, had just decided she was the most captivating person he'd ever seen. If you believe in the kind of love that sees beyond surfaces, in women who refuse to shrink themselves, and in justice served saltwater style, hit that like button and follow this channel. Now, let me tell you how a summer meant to break her became the summer that remade her completely. Madison Hayes had always loved the ocean, though she'd spent most of her 28 years watching it from hotel balconies rather than swimming in it. The marketing executive had booked this month-long stay at Paradise Cove with money saved from 3 years of 70-hour work weeks, desperate for the kind of soul restoration that only salt air could provide. She arrived on a Sunday afternoon in June, her blonde hair already lightening in the coastal sun, her vintage convertible Beetle packed with sundresses she'd spent weeks selecting. The beach house rental was perfect, a small blue cottage with white trim, close enough to hear the waves at night. As she unpacked her suitcases, carefully hanging each outfit, she caught her reflection in the full-length mirror. Her curves were pronounced. Full breasts, rounded stomach, thick thighs that had always made shopping a challenge. But here, away from the judgment of Chicago's fitness-obsessed culture, she thought maybe she could finally just exist. Just breathe. Just be Madison without the constant internal commentary about her body. That first evening, she walked the shoreline at sunset, her bare feet sinking into cool sand. Paradise Cove was everything the photos promised. A crescent of pristine beach flanked by rocky cliffs dotted with palm trees and colorful beach umbrellas. The town itself was small, maybe 5,000 permanent residents, with a main street of surf shops, seafood restaurants, and ice cream parlors with punny names. Madison noticed the social ecosystem immediately. Near the main lifeguard tower, a group of impossibly tanned, model-thin women held court, their laughter musical and exclusive. Families clustered near the calmer waters, surfers carved through waves with athletic grace. She found a quiet spot away from the crowds, spread her oversized beach towel, the one with cheerful yellow sunflowers, and simply sat, letting the rhythmic crash of waves unknot the tension she'd carried in her shoulders for years. For the first time in months, she felt something close to peace. Tomorrow, she promised herself, she'd be brave enough to actually go in the water. The trouble started on day 3. Madison had established a routine. Morning coffee on her cottage porch, then a walk to the beach around 9 a.m. before the crowds arrived. She'd found her spot, a stretch of sand near some tide pools where she could read without interruption. That Wednesday morning, she wore a new swimsuit she'd ordered online, a retro-style one-piece with a sweetheart neckline in deep navy blue, paired with high-waisted bottoms that made her feel almost glamorous. She'd even worn her hair in victory rolls, a style she loved but rarely dared to wear at home. As she walked across the sand, she noticed the group of thin women had arrived early too. Their leader, she'd learn later her name was Sienna Martinez, had the kind of body that made magazine covers, all sharp collarbones and flat stomach. Sienna was holding court with 4 other women, all variations on the same theme of conventional beauty. As Madison passed, she smiled politely. None of them smiled back. Instead, she heard the whisper, "Brave of her." Sienna Martinez was 26 and had been the undisputed queen of Paradise Cove since her family moved here when she was 16. Daughter of a successful real estate developer, she spent her summers teaching yoga on the beach and her winters in Bali, funding her lifestyle through Instagram sponsorships for bikinis and detox teas. She dated half the eligible men in town and discarded them just as quickly. But for the past 8 months, she'd set her sights on someone different. Kai Sullivan, the 32-year-old surf instructor who'd returned to Paradise Cove after a decade of competing professionally. Kai was local legend. Raised by his grandmother after his parents died in a car accident, he'd taken his grief to the waves and transformed it into poetry of motion. He'd won championships, traveled the world, dated supermodels. And then he'd come home, quieter, deeper, running surf lessons for kids and spending his evenings repairing his grandmother's house. Sienna had been pursuing him relentlessly, showing up at his lessons in her smallest bikinis, inviting him to beach parties, making her interest abundantly clear. Kai was always polite, always kind, and always distant. It drove her mad. Madison didn't notice Kai that first week. She was too busy rediscovering simple pleasures. The taste of fresh mango, the feeling of sun on her shoulders, the way her body felt weightless in the ocean. She'd started going in the water each morning, timing it for when the beach was nearly empty. Swimming had always been her secret joy, the one physical activity where her size didn't matter, where she felt graceful instead of clumsy. She was a strong swimmer, her powerful legs propelling her through the waves with surprising speed. On Thursday morning, she ventured out farther than usual, diving under swells, letting the salt water wash away years of boardroom stress. She didn't see the man on the surfboard watching her from 30 yards away, or the way his eyes tracked her movement through the water with something like wonder. She didn't notice how he'd stopped paddling out to his usual break just to watch her swim. She was too lost in the freedom of motion, too grateful for the ocean's acceptance of her body exactly as it was. Kai Sullivan had been teaching a dawn patrol surf lesson when he first saw her. The blonde woman emerged from the cottage row wearing a sundress, her curves evident but carried with a grace that caught his attention. But it was when she entered the water that he truly noticed her. She swam like she belonged to the ocean, confident, powerful strokes, unafraid of the deeper water most tourists avoided. He watched her dive under a wave, her blonde hair streaming behind her, and felt something shift in his chest. Kai had spent years surrounded by women who treated their bodies like projects, who counted every calorie and obsessed over every angle for Instagram. There was something different about this woman, something authentic. She wasn't performing beauty. She was simply being. Over the next few days, he found himself timing his morning surf to coincide with her swims. He didn't approach her, not yet. He just watched, captivated by someone who seemed completely unconscious of her own magnetism. Sienna noticed, and Sienna seethed. The confrontation happened on Saturday, exactly 1 week into Madison's vacation. She'd walked to the beach earlier than usual, hoping to catch the sunrise. She spread her sunflower towel in her usual spot, set down her bag with her book and water bottle, and headed straight for the ocean. The water was perfect, cool but not cold, with gentle waves that invited play. She spent 40 minutes swimming, diving, floating on her back, watching clouds. When she returned to shore, dripping and smiling, her hair plastered to her shoulders, she found Sienna and her 4 friends standing around her towel. They'd moved it, dragged it 20 feet closer to the water, right at the tide line where the waves were starting to reach it. Her book was wet, pages curling. Her bag had sand kicked over it. But worse was the audience they'd gathered. At least a dozen early morning beachgoers had stopped to watch. Sienna stood with her arms crossed, her perfect body showcased in a white bikini that probably cost more than Madison's rent. "Excuse me," Madison said, her voice steady despite the racing of her heart. "That's my spot." Sienna's smile was saccharine. "Oh, honey, we didn't realize someone was here. This stuff just seemed abandoned." Her friends giggled. "Though I have to say," Sienna continued, her voice carrying, "You're brave, coming out here in a swimsuit like that." Madison felt her face flush. "I don't understand what you mean." "Come on," Sienna said, gesturing up and down at Madison's body. "You're really comfortable being out here in public? I mean, maybe at private pools or something, but here, where everyone can see." The words landed like physical blows. Madison's throat tightened. Around them, people were staring, some uncomfortable, some clearly enjoying the drama. "There's nothing wrong with my body," Madison managed, but her voice wavered. "Of course not," Sienna said brightly. "Body positivity and all that. I just think maybe more coverage for everyone's comfort." Her friends erupted in barely suppressed laughter. Madison grabbed her wet towel, her ruined book, her sand-covered bag. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped her sunglasses twice, trying to gather her things. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of these women who'd smelled weakness like blood in the water. "I was just trying to help," Sienna called after her as Madison walked away. "Someone has to be honest with her," she said loudly to her friends. The walk back to her cottage felt eternal. Every person she passed felt like another judge, another critic. By the time she reached her front door, tears were streaming down her face. She'd been stupid to think this place would be different, stupid to think she could just exist in a swimsuit without commentary, stupid to think her body would ever be allowed to just be neutral, unremarkable, acceptable. She showered in water too hot, scrubbing the salt and shame from her skin until it was pink and raw. Then she crawled into bed at 10 in the morning and cried herself to sleep. For 3 days, Madison didn't go back to the beach. She told herself she was catching up on rest, that she needed quiet time, but the truth was darker. Sienna's words had awakened every insecurity she'd spent years trying to quiet. She remembered middle school, when boys would moo at her in the hallways. High school, when she wasn't invited to pool parties. College, when her roommate gently suggested maybe Madison would be more comfortable if she didn't come to spring break. Her 20s had been slightly better. She'd built a career, found a small circle of friends who loved her, developed a carefully curated wardrobe that made her feel powerful in meetings. But under the armor of professional success, the wound remained. Her body was something to be managed, hidden, apologized for. And now, even on vacation in a town where nobody knew her, that wound had been ripped open again. On the 3rd day of her self-imposed isolation, she sat on her porch at sunset and admitted to herself that she had 3 weeks left on her rental and she was miserable. What Madison didn't know was that her absence had been noticed. Kai Sullivan paddled out each morning looking for the blonde woman who swam like a dolphin, and each morning she wasn't there. He asked around carefully, nothing that would draw attention, just casual questions at the surf shop. "The woman in the blue cottage? Haven't seen her in days," the owner said. "Poor thing. Heard Sienna Martinez and her crew gave her hell last Saturday. Probably scared her off the beach." Kai's jaw tightened. He knew Sienna's cruelty well. He'd been dodging her attention for months, had seen how she treated anyone she perceived as competition or beneath her social status. That evening, he did something he almost never did. He walked to the blue cottage and knocked on the door. When Madison answered, blonde hair in a messy bun, wearing an oversized t-shirt that said, "Nevertheless," she persisted. He found himself momentarily speechless, even without makeup, with sadness still evident in her blue eyes. She was luminous. "Hi," he said. "I think we need to talk." Madison stared at the stranger on her porch. Tall, deeply tanned, with dark hair that fell in waves to his shoulders, and eyes the color of sea glass. He wore board shorts and a faded t-shirt, and something about him radiated calm competence. "I'm sorry," she said. "Do I know you?" "Not yet," he said with a slight smile. "I'm Kai. I teach surfing here, and I saw what happened to you last Saturday." Madison's stomach dropped. "I'd really rather not talk about it." She started to close the door, but his next words stopped her. "Sienna Martinez is a bully who peaked in high school and never grew beyond it. She's cruel to women she sees as threats, which tells me everything I need to know about how threatened she is by you." Madison blinked. "Threatened? By me?" Kai's expression was serious. "Can I come in? Or we could talk on the beach if you prefer. I just think you should know some things before you let those women steal the rest of your vacation." After a long moment, Madison stepped aside and let him in. They sat on her porch, she in the wicker rocking chair, he on the railing, and Kai told her things about Sienna's history of territorial behavior, about the young women who'd left Paradise Cove in tears over the years because Sienna decided they didn't belong, about how the local business owners tolerated it because Sienna's father owned half the commercial real estate in town. "She's been after me for months," Kai said, his tone matter-of-fact, "showing up everywhere I go, making her interest very clear. I've been polite about turning her down, but she doesn't take no for an answer well." "What does this have to do with me?" Madison asked, though something was starting to click into place. Kai looked at her directly. "She saw me watching you swim, the morning before she confronted you. I'd stopped my whole lesson because I was so captivated by watching you move through the water," she noticed. Madison's breath caught. "You were watching me?" "Yeah," Kai said simply. "I was. You swim beautifully." For the first time in days, Madison felt something other than shame. She felt anger, clean, bright, clarifying anger. "So she humiliated me because she thinks you're interested in me. That's insane." "That's Sienna," Kai confirmed. "But here's the thing, Madison." He paused, and she realized she'd never told him her name. "The surf shop owner told me," he explained at her look. "Here's the thing, you can let her win. You can hide in this cottage for the next 3 weeks, fly home having spent thousands of dollars to feel worse about yourself than when you arrived. Or," he leaned forward, "or you can go back to that beach, take up space, enjoy your vacation, and show her that she doesn't get to decide who belongs and who doesn't." Madison wrapped her arms around herself. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one everyone was laughing at." "You're right," Kai said, "but I saw something else that morning. Before you noticed them, you looked free, joyful, like you were exactly where you belonged. Don't let them take that from you." After Kai left, with a promise to save her a spot for a surf lesson if she wanted one, Madison sat on her porch as the sun set over the ocean. His words circled in her mind. She thought about the pattern of her life, the way she'd always made herself smaller to make others comfortable. In high school, she'd stopped raising her hand in class after a boy said something cruel about how her arm jiggled. In college, she'd skipped the swimming unit in PE rather than wear a swimsuit in front of classmates. In her career, she'd developed a uniform of structured black separates that hid her shape, afraid that showing her body would make people take her less seriously. She'd spent 28 years contorting herself to fit into spaces that were never designed for her. And for what? To still end up humiliated on a beach by a woman who felt threatened by her existence. The anger grew. It felt good. It felt like fuel. That night, Madison did something she hadn't done in years. She researched, not diet plans or workout regimes or flattering swimwear for plus-size women. Instead, she fell down a rabbit hole of body liberation accounts, fat activists, women who refused to apologize for taking up space. She read articles about fat phobia and health at every size. She watched videos of plus-size women surfing, swimming, running marathons, living unapologetically. She read comment sections where other women shared stories nearly identical to hers. The public humiliations, the internalized shame, the moment they decided enough was enough. One article quoted a researcher who studied bias. When someone attacks your body, they're trying to make you focus on defending your right to exist instead of claiming your right to thrive. Madison read that sentence 3 times. She'd spent her whole life defending her right to exist. What would it feel like to claim her right to thrive? At 2 in the morning, she made a decision. Tomorrow, she'd go back to the beach. Madison walked onto the sand at 9 a.m. wearing her navy blue swimsuit, her blonde hair in a high ponytail, her head high despite her racing heart. She spread her sunflower towel in the exact spot Sienna had violated the week before. Her hands shook slightly as she set down her bag, but she forced herself to move deliberately to claim this space. She saw Sienna notice her arrival, saw the flash of surprise, then annoyance cross that perfect face. Madison didn't look away. She held Sienna's gaze for 3 long seconds, then turned and walked into the ocean. The water welcomed her like an old friend. She swam out past the breakers, dove deep, let the salt water baptize her anger into something like purpose. When she surfaced, pushing her hair back from her face, she saw Kai sitting on his surfboard about 20 yards away. He raised his hand in greeting, his smile visible even from that distance. She waved back. On shore, Sienna was watching. Let her, Madison thought, let her watch me exist. You came back. The voice came from beside Madison's towel an hour later. She looked up from her book to see a woman about her age. Black, beautiful, with natural hair in goddess locks and a body that would also be labeled plus size by fashion magazines. I'm Jasmine, the woman said. I saw what happened last week. I also saw you come back today. That took courage. She gestured to the empty sand beside Madison's towel. Mind if I set up here? Madison's eyes stung with sudden emotion. Please, as Jasmine spread her towel, bright African print, she continued. Sienna pulled similar stuff with me when I first started coming here 2 years ago. I'm a food blogger, do recipe videos for my channel. She told me maybe I should try making salads instead. She laughed, but there was steel in her voice. That day, I decided I was going to take up so much space on this beach that she'd have to learn to deal with it. So I come here 3 times a week, and I never, ever let her make me feel small. Over the next hour, 2 more women joined them. First came Rosa, a Puerto Rican nurse from 3 towns over who drove to Paradise Cove on her days off because the water helped her decompress from hospital shifts. She was short and soft. With curves, she dressed in bright, bold colors. I heard through the beach grapevine that someone stood up to Sienna, she said to Madison with a grin. Had to come see the legend myself. Then came Aisha, a local high school art teacher who was thin by conventional standards but had a visible facial birthmark that Sienna had mocked years ago. Enemy of my enemy, she said by way of introduction. By noon, Madison found herself part of an impromptu group, 4 women of different backgrounds, different body types, united by the experience of being deemed unworthy by people like Sienna. They talked, laughed, shared their stories. For the first time in days, Madison felt something she'd been missing: sisterhood. She wasn't alone in this fight. She'd never been alone. She just hadn't known where to find her people. The following week established a new rhythm. Madison swam each morning, pushing herself to go farther, stay longer. Kai often surfed nearby. They didn't talk much, but his presence felt protective, encouraging. After swimming, she'd meet Jasmine, Rosa, and Aisha in their claimed spot. They'd set up their towels in a row, a rainbow of defiance. Other beachgoers began to recognize them, smile at them. Some even moved their own setups closer, creating a buffer zone between them and Sienna's territory. Madison felt herself changing in ways that had nothing to do with her body's size or shape. She stood taller, made eye contact with strangers, wore her favorite sundress, the one with thin straps that showed her soft upper arms, without the cardigan she usually hid behind. One afternoon, when a little girl stared at her in the beach shower, Madison didn't hunch her shoulders in shame. Instead, she smiled at the child and said, "Pretty swimsuit you've got there." The mother smiled gratefully. These small moments of existing without apology felt revolutionary. But Sienna wasn't finished. She escalated subtly at first, giving Madison's group pointed looks, making sure they heard her stage-whispered comments to her friends about desperation and letting yourself go. She posted Instagram stories from the beach that seemed designed to exclude anyone who didn't look like her. She complained to the lifeguards that Madison's group was taking up too much space, though they occupied no more sand than any other group of 4 people. Madison's new friends warned her. "She's building to something," Jasmine said. "She doesn't like being ignored. She'll want a bigger confrontation." Rosa agreed. "She needs to win publicly. The fact that you're here, happy, thriving, it's eating at her." Aisha, who'd known Sienna longest, was most concerned. Her dad's hosting the annual Paradise Cove Summer Gala in 2 weeks. Huge event, whole town goes. She'll be holding court. It would be the perfect stage for her to make a scene. Madison absorbed this information. Then maybe, she said slowly, I need to be prepared to make a scene of my own. The pivotal moment came on a Saturday afternoon, 3 weeks into Madison's stay. She was in the water, swimming her usual route, when she noticed a commotion on the beach. Sienna and her friends had approached Madison's empty towel, where her new friends were sitting, protecting her spot while she swam. Madison started swimming back to shore, her powerful legs churning through the waves. As she got closer, she could see Sienna holding up Madison's phone, which had been in her bag. "Let me guess," Sienna was saying loudly, playing to the gathering crowd. "You're here catfishing someone? There's no way you look like your dating app photos." Jasmine stood up, put her phone down. "Make me," Sienna said, dangling it higher. That's when Kai appeared, materializing from the crowd with his surfboard under his arm. "Sienna," he said, his voice carrying authority, "drop the phone. Now." Sienna's face lit up in triumph. Finally, she had his full attention. This was the moment she'd been orchestrating all along. "Kai," Sienna's voice turned honeyed, "I was just trying to help these women understand that..." "That what?" Kai cut her off. "That you're so insecure you have to tear down strangers to feel powerful." The beach had gone quiet. This was the most words anyone had heard Kai speak in public in months. "I've been nothing but kind to you," he continued, "even though your behavior has been borderline stalking. But going after someone's personal property, that's theft, Sienna, in front of witnesses." Madison reached the shore, water streaming from her hair and body. Sienna's eyes flicked to her, and something ugly crossed her face, the realization that Kai had publicly defended this fat woman over her. "You're interested in her?" Sienna said, her voice rising. "Her? Are you kidding me?" The disgust in her tone was venomous. Madison felt the familiar shame rising, but before it could take hold, Kai smiled, actually smiled, and said words that would echo through Paradise Cove for the rest of the summer. "Interested doesn't begin to cover it, I'm captivated." The silence on the beach was absolute. Sienna's mouth opened and closed, no sound emerging. Her friends exchanged panicked glances. Their leader had just been rejected in the most public way possible. Madison stood dripping at the water's edge, her heart hammering so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Kai walked over to her, took her hand gently, and led her to her towel. He picked up her phone from where Sienna had dropped it in the sand and handed it to Madison, his sea glass eyes warm. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Madison nodded, not trusting her voice. Around them, people were murmuring, pulling out phones, capturing the moment. Sienna's perfectly constructed social media image was crumbling in real time. "This is ridiculous," Sienna finally sputtered. "You're choosing her because you feel sorry for her. It's a pity thing." Kai turned, his expression hardening. "No, Sienna. I'm choosing her because she's genuine, kind, and brave. 3 things you're clearly unfamiliar with." Then he looked at Madison. "If you want me to be choosing you, that is, no pressure." Madison felt something crack open inside her chest, not breaking, but blooming. For the first time in her life, someone was publicly claiming her as desirable, not in spite of her body, but including it, celebrating it. "Yes," she heard herself say, "I want that." Kai's smile transformed his whole face. "Then maybe you'd let me teach you to surf later, if you're free." "I'm free," Madison said, and realized she meant it in more ways than one. Sienna made a noise of pure frustration. "You're going to regret this," she spat, directing her venom at Kai. "When you realize what people think, when you see the comments, when you understand how this looks." "How it looks," Kai interrupted, "is like I'm the luckiest guy on this beach." He turned his back on Sienna, the ultimate dismissal, and asked Madison and her friends, "Do any of you want coffee? There's a great place on Main Street." As they gathered their things, Sienna stood frozen, her 4 friends hovering uncertainly behind her. Her kingdom was crumbling, and everyone was watching it fall. The coffee shop on Main Street, a place called The Grind, was buzzing when they arrived. Word traveled fast in Paradise Cove. By the time Madison, Kai, Jasmine, Rosa, and Aisha walked in, several people nodded at them approvingly. The owner, an older woman named Dolores, who'd lived in Paradise Cove her whole life, waved them over. "Coffee's on the house," she announced loudly. "About time someone stood up to that Martinez girl." As they settled into a corner booth, Madison finally let herself process what had happened. "That was—" she started, then laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. "That was the most terrifying and exhilarating thing I've ever experienced." Kai sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his sun-heated skin. "I should have done it weeks ago," he said. "I shouldn't have waited until she violated your privacy. I'm sorry about that." "You have nothing to apologize for," Madison said, "but I need to understand. Why? Why me? I mean—" She gestured at herself, all the insecurity flooding back now that the adrenaline was fading. Kai took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "When I was competing professionally, I dated the women everyone expected me to date. Models, sponsored athletes, Instagram influencers, and I was miserable. They were nice people, mostly, but everything was performance. Every meal calculated, every photo staged, every moment about image." He stirred sugar into his coffee, his movements deliberate. "I came back to Paradise Cove because I was burned out on all of that. I wanted something real. And then I saw you swimming that first morning, and you were just present, in your body, in the moment, not performing for anyone. You moved through the water with this joy and power that took my breath away. I've been trying to work up the courage to introduce myself for weeks." Madison stared at him. "You were nervous to talk to me?" "Terrified," Kai admitted, with a self-deprecating smile. "You seemed so complete on your own, like you didn't need anyone or anything." It was incredibly attractive. Jasmine kicked Madison under the table. "Girl, if you don't grab this man—" They talked for hours. The coffee shop crowd thinned and refilled with the dinner rush. Madison learned that Kai had grown up poor, raised by his grandmother in a small house 3 blocks from the beach. Surfing had been his escape and his salvation. He'd won his first amateur competition at 15, turned pro at 18. "But competing changed surfing for me," he explained. "It stopped being about the connection with the ocean and became about judges' scores, sponsor obligations, training regimens. By the time I was 30, I realized I'd turned the thing I loved most into just another job." He'd come home 2 years ago to care for his ailing grandmother. She'd passed 6 months later, leaving him the house. Now he taught kids to surf, ran beach cleanups, and was slowly building a non-profit to provide free surf lessons to low-income youth. "It's not glamorous," he said, "but it feels right." Madison found herself completely captivated by this man who'd walked away from fame to come home to what mattered. As sunset approached, they walked back to the beach together, the whole group plus a few other locals who'd joined them at the grind, creating an impromptu parade down Main Street. Sienna was still there. Her territory shrunk to just her 4 friends, their earlier crowd of admirers conspicuously absent. As Madison's group passed, Sienna called out, "Enjoy your little moment, Madison. This is a small town. Everyone's going to have an opinion about you two." Madison surprised herself by stopping and walking directly over to Sienna. Her new friends tensed, ready to back her up if needed. Madison stood in front of Sienna, who was sitting down, for once looking up at her, and said calmly, "You know what I've realized, Sienna? You tried to make me feel ashamed of my body because you're ashamed that it's the only thing you have. Take that away. And what are you? Mean, shallow, empty, and I actually feel sorry for you." She turned to walk away, then paused. "Oh, and I'll be at your father's gala. Save me a dance." The threat, or promise, hung in the air. Sienna's face went white, then red. "You're not invited," she hissed. "My dad's hosting," Kai said mildly, stepping up beside Madison. "I'm invited. I'm bringing a +1. It's open to the whole town anyway. Your dad's running for mayor, remember? He wants everyone there." The realization that they'd be at her signature event, in her father's house, after she'd been publicly rejected and humiliated, seemed to finally break through Sienna's bravado. "I'll make sure you regret coming," she said, but her voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Looking forward to it," Madison said, and meant it. As they walked away, Jasmine whispered, "You know she's going to pull something at that gala, right? Something big." "I know," Madison said, "but I'm done hiding, done shrinking, done letting people like her decide where I'm allowed to exist." She looked at Kai, who squeezed her hand. "Besides," she added, "I have a feeling I won't be facing her alone." The next 2 weeks were a revelation. Madison and Kai fell into an easy companionship that surprised them both with its natural rhythm. He taught her to surf, patient with her falls, celebrating her small victories. "You're a natural," he said after she managed to stand for a full 3 seconds on her first real wave. "Your swimming background gives you an advantage. You understand how to read the water." They had dinner together most evenings, sometimes at restaurants, sometimes picking up fish tacos and eating on the beach as the sun set. Kai introduced her to his friends, a tight-knit group of locals who'd known him since childhood. They welcomed Madison without hesitation. She introduced him to her Chicago life via video calls. Her best friend Sarah screamed so loudly when she saw Kai that they had to switch to text. "If you don't marry him, I will fly there and marry him myself," Sarah messaged. The word marriage should have scared Madison. Instead, it felt strangely possible, strangely inevitable. They talked about everything. Madison shared stories from her corporate life, the casual sexism, the constant pressure to be perfect, the way her body had always been treated as a professional liability rather than just a neutral fact. "I had a boss once tell me I should dress more professionally, while my male colleagues wore basically whatever they wanted. When I pushed back, he said clients might not take me seriously. What he meant was, 'Your body is unprofessional.'" Kai's jaw tightened. "That's discrimination." "It is," Madison agreed, "but proving it, fighting it, that takes more energy than I had while also doing my actual job." She was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about quitting, starting something of my own, maybe consulting, where I control the environment." Kai nodded slowly. What would that look like? And they were off. Madison sketching out business plans in the sand, while Kai asked questions that helped her refine her vision. By the time the sun set, she had the bones of a real plan. "I could do this from anywhere," she realized, "even here." The physical intimacy between them developed slowly, which Madison found both frustrating and perfect. Kai seemed content with hand-holding, casual touches, kisses that left her breathless but never pushed for more. Finally, one evening on her cottage porch, she asked him directly, "Are you not attracted to me that way?" Kai looked genuinely shocked. "Madison, I'm so attracted to you I can barely think straight sometimes. But you've been hurt by Sienna, by people your whole life. I don't want to be another person who makes you feel like your body is the only thing that matters." "What if I want you to find my body attractive?" Madison asked. "What if I need to feel desired, not just respected?" Kai moved closer, his hand cupping her face. "Your body is magnificent," he said, his voice low. "Your curves, your strength, the way you move, I think about it constantly, but I wanted you to trust that first." "I do trust you," Madison whispered. "Then come here," Kai said, and finally, kissed her the way she'd been dreaming about. The night before the gala, Madison went dress shopping with Jasmine, Rosa, and Aisha. They drove to the larger town, 40 minutes away, determined to find something spectacular. The first 3 stores were disasters. Nothing in Madison's size, sales clerks with thinly veiled judgment, the usual nightmare of shopping while fat. But the 4th store was different. The owner, a woman named Patricia, who was herself plus size, took one look at them and said, "Special occasion." "Revenge," Jasmine said cheerfully. Patricia grinned. "My favorite kind of special." She disappeared into the back and emerged with dresses in jewel tones and rich fabrics. Madison tried on 7 before she found it. A deep emerald green gown with a fitted bodice that celebrated her curves, a flowing skirt that moved like water, and a back that plunged dramatically. When she emerged from the dressing room, her friends went silent. "That's the one," Rosa finally breathed. "Sienna's going to lose her mind," Aisha added with satisfaction. Madison looked at herself in the three-way mirror. For once, she didn't see flaws to fix. She saw a woman ready for battle. The morning of the gala, Sienna made one last attempt to regain control. She posted on Instagram a lengthy caption about body positivity going too far, about promoting unhealthy lifestyles, about how real concern for someone's health isn't bullying. She never mentioned Madison by name, but everyone knew who she meant. The post went semi-viral, with Sienna's followers divided between support and disgust. But something else happened too. Women began sharing their own stories in the comments, stories of being humiliated, excluded, hurt by people like Sienna. Madison's friends reshared these stories. By afternoon, the narrative had flipped. Sienna tried to delete the post, but screenshots had already spread. Local news outlets picked it up. Her father, desperate to salvage his mayoral campaign, issued a statement distancing himself from his daughter's personal views and emphasizing that the gala was welcoming to all body types. Sienna had tried to destroy Madison's reputation and ended up damaging her own. As Madison got ready for the gala, her phone pinged with a message from Kai. Ready to dance? The Martinez estate sat on a cliff overlooking the ocean, a sprawling modern mansion of glass and white stone. Strings of lights created a canopy over the terrace where the gala was being held. A live band played jazz standards. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The guest list included everyone who was anyone in Paradise Cove: business owners, city council members, wealthy summer residents, and about 200 locals who'd shown up for the free food and entertainment. Madison arrived on Kai's arm, her green dress shimmering in the evening light, her blonde hair styled in soft waves down her back. She wore lipstick the color of confidence and heels that made her nearly 6 feet tall. Kai wore a dark suit that made him look less like a beach bum and more like the professional athlete he'd once been. When they appeared at the entrance, conversation noticeably paused. People turned, stared. Then someone started clapping. Others joined in. By the time they descended the stairs to the terrace, they had a standing ovation. Sienna was holding court near the band, surrounded by her usual entourage, wearing a white dress that probably cost more than Madison's car. When she saw Madison and Kai, her smile froze. Her father, Marcus Martinez, a robust man with political ambitions written all over his expensive suit, noticed the commotion and hurried over. "Kai!" he boomed, shaking Kai's hand enthusiastically. "So glad you could make it. And you must be Madison. I've heard quite a bit about you." The look he gave his daughter was pointed. "All welcome here, of course. Please enjoy yourselves." As he moved on to greet other guests, Kai leaned down to whisper in Madison's ear. He's desperate to control the narrative. Sienna's posts have been damaging his campaign. Madison watched Sienna watching them, her expression a mixture of rage and something else. Was that fear? Good, Madison thought. Let her feel what it's like to be vulnerable. Let her wonder what happens next. The evening unfolded like a dream. Madison danced with Kai, really danced. Not the self-conscious shuffling she'd done at weddings while trying to hide her body. He held her close, guided her through turns, made her feel graceful and light despite her size. They danced with others too. Jasmine and her husband Rosa with a handsome firefighter she'd been dating, Aisha with her wife. They ate delicious food without guilt or commentary. They laughed with locals who shared stories about standing up to Sienna over the years. "You're a hero," one older woman said to Madison, squeezing her hand. "My granddaughter is plus size. She saw what happened on the beach, saw you come back the next day. She told me, 'Grandma, if that lady can be brave, so can I.'" She wore her swimsuit to the community pool for the first time in 3 years. Madison's eyes filled with tears. She hadn't realized her small act of defiance had rippled outward, touching lives she'd never know. She was becoming more than herself. She was becoming a symbol, Around 10 p.m., Sienna finally approached them. She'd been drinking. Madison could see it in the slightly unsteady way she walked, the brittleness in her smile. "Madison," she said, her voice artificially sweet. "Can we talk, privately?" Kai tensed, but Madison touched his arm. "It's okay." She followed Sienna to a quiet corner of the terrace, away from the crowd. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, two women separated by society's arbitrary standards of acceptable bodies, united only by their humanity. "I want to understand," Sienna finally said, and for the first time, she sounded genuine. "What is it about you? Why does everyone suddenly care about you?" Madison considered her answer carefully. "They don't care about me specifically, Sienna. They care about what I represent. I'm every woman who's been told she's not enough, every girl who's been excluded, every person who's been judged by their appearance rather than their character. When you attacked me, you attacked all of them, and they're tired of it." Sienna's mask cracked. "You think it's easy being me? You think I don't have pressure? I have to look perfect every single day. One bad photo and my sponsors drop me. 1 pound gained and the comments pour in. I built everything on this." She gestured at her body. "And it's not enough either. It's never enough." Madison felt an unexpected wave of compassion. "So tear down the system, Sienna, not the other women trying to survive it. Is that what you think I was doing? Surviving?" Sienna's laugh was bitter. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I've been so focused on staying on top that I forgot there's enough room for all of us." She looked at Madison directly. "I'm not going to apologize. I'm not that person yet, but I'm not going to come after you anymore either. You win." "It was never about winning," Madison said quietly. "It was about existing, about taking up space without permission. You should try it sometime, actually living instead of performing." Sienna's eyes glistened. She nodded once, then walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Madison returned to Kai, who immediately wrapped his arm around her waist. "Everything okay?" She nodded. "I think it will be." As the night wore on, Madison found herself in conversation with Marcus Martinez. "My campaign manager tells me you're in marketing," he said. "Executive level in Chicago." "Was," Madison corrected. "I've decided to go independent. Consulting, strategy work, but on my own terms." Marcus's eyes lit up. "Any chance you'd consider relocating? Paradise Cove is growing. We need smart people who understand branding and digital presence. God knows my campaign could use help after—" He trailed off, glancing toward where Sienna sat alone, staring at her phone. "I'll think about it," Madison said, surprising herself. The idea that had seemed impossible 3 weeks ago now felt inevitable. She caught Kai's eye across the terrace. He was watching her with such open admiration that her breath caught. Yes, she could see herself building a life here. She could see herself building a life with him. The gala ended around midnight. Kai walked Madison back to her cottage, their hands intertwined, her heels dangling from her other hand as they walked barefoot on the still warm pavement. The ocean roared in the darkness, constant and eternal. "That was quite a night," Kai said. "Thank you for being there." "Always," he said simply. At her door, she turned to face him. "Come in." He searched her face. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Inside, they moved to her small porch, sitting on the wicker love seat, watching the moon's reflection on the water. "I don't want this to end," Madison said. "This vacation, this feeling, us. So don't let it end," Kai said. "Stay, or let me visit Chicago, or we'll figure out something in between. But Madison, I haven't felt this way about anyone in my entire life. I'm not letting you go without a fight." She kissed him then, deep and certain, tasting salt air and possibility. They made love that night with a tenderness that made Madison cry. Kai worshipped her body with his hands and mouth, telling her she was beautiful, perfect, magnificent. For the first time in her life, Madison believed it. Not because a man said it, but because she felt it radiating from inside herself outward. The shame she'd carried for 28 years was finally, blessedly quiet. Afterward, they lay tangled in her sheets, the sound of the ocean drifting through the open window. "I love you," Kai said into the darkness. "I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a month, but I love you." Madison's heart felt too big for her chest. "I love you too." They fell asleep like that, her head on his chest, his arms around her soft body, both of them dreaming of a future that suddenly seemed not just possible, but inevitable. Outside, the tide rolled in and out, patient as time, wearing away sharp edges, making space for new shapes to emerge. The final week of Madison's rental flew by. She and Kai spent every moment together, talking about logistics and dreams. She had client calls with her Chicago network, testing the waters for independent consulting. The response was overwhelming. 3 companies wanted to hire her immediately. She could work remotely from anywhere. Paradise Cove suddenly seemed not just romantic, but practical. Kai introduced her to a real estate agent. "Just looking," Madison said, but her heart raced as they toured a small house 3 blocks from the beach, with a porch perfect for morning coffee and a spare room that could be an office. It needed work, but it felt right. That afternoon, she made an offer. That evening, she gave notice at her Chicago apartment. By the end of the week, she'd restructured her entire life around this coastal town and the man who'd seen her worth before she fully believed it herself. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was exactly what she needed to do. On her last official day of vacation, before she'd returned to Chicago to pack up her life, Madison organized a beach day for all the women who'd supported her. Jasmine brought her famous jerk chicken. Rosa made her abuela's famous flan. Aisha contributed a massive fruit salad. They set up a sprawling camp of towels and umbrellas in their usual spot, claiming space joyfully and unapologetically. Other women joined them throughout the day. Some Madison knew, others who'd heard about the impromptu gathering. They ranged in age from teenagers to women in their 70s. They came in all sizes, shapes, colors. What united them was a quiet defiance, a shared understanding that their bodies were not apologies. Kai and some of his friends set up a volleyball net. They played without keeping score, laughing at missed serves and celebrating impossible saves. At one point, Madison looked around at this community she'd accidentally built and felt overwhelming gratitude. She'd come to Paradise Cove to hide. She was leaving, having found herself. Sienna appeared around sunset. Madison saw her first, standing at the edge of their gathering, uncertain for perhaps the first time in her life. Madison excused herself from her conversation and walked over. "Hi," she said simply. Sienna looked at her, then at the group of laughing women behind her. "I've been thinking about what you said, about existing instead of performing." She took a breath. "My therapist says I have some work to do, on myself, on why I need to tear others down to feel tall." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. Recognition, maybe. The beginning of accountability. "That's good," Madison said. "I hope you find what you're looking for." Sienna nodded. "For what it's worth, that dress you wore to the gala, you looked beautiful. I was jealous." She walked away before Madison could respond, but it was enough. Not forgiveness, that would take time if it came at all, but the possibility of a different future. Sometimes that was the best you could hope for. That night, Kai took Madison to his favorite spot, a hidden cove, accessible only by a steep path down the cliff face. They sat on the rocks as the sun set in impossible colors, painting the sky in oranges and purples and pinks. "I bought the house," Madison told him. "It needs a lot of work. New roof, updated plumbing, probably some electrical issues. I'm pretty handy," Kai offered with a smile. "My grandmother taught me. I could help." "I was hoping you'd say that." Madison leaned against him. "I'm scared, Kai. What if I'm making a huge mistake? What if this is just vacation brain, and in 6 months I realize I've torpedoed my life for a summer romance?" Kai was quiet for a moment. "Then you'll figure it out. You'll adjust." "But Madison, I don't think that's what's happening here. I think you're finally living the life you were always meant to live. I'm just grateful I get to be part of it." The waves crashed against the rocks below, eternal and unstoppable. like the future rushing toward them, wild and beautiful and theirs to shape. 6 months later, Madison stood on the newly renovated porch of her beach house, watching the sunrise paint the ocean gold. Behind her, Kai slept in their bed now, since he'd officially moved in 3 weeks ago. Her consulting business had exceeded all expectations. She had 6 retainer clients and had just hired her first employee, a brilliant young woman from Paradise Cove who was plus size and had been told she wasn't polished enough for corporate work. Madison was teaching her everything, building the kind of inclusive company she'd wished she'd had in Chicago. The house had been transformed through weekends of work. Kai handling construction, Madison managing design. It was small but perfect, filled with light and the constant sound of waves. She'd gained 10 pounds since moving here. She noticed because her clothes fit differently. She didn't care. Her body was strong from swimming daily, from helping with renovation work, from making love with abandon. Her body was happy. That was all that mattered. Marcus Martinez had won his mayoral race, partly because Madison had overhauled his campaign's digital strategy. He'd become an unexpected ally, using his platform to talk about inclusive tourism and body-positive beach culture. Paradise Cove was changing, slowly but noticeably. The local gym had stopped running beach body boot camp ads. The tourist board's new promotional materials featured bodies of all sizes. 2 new boutiques had opened that carried extended sizing. It wasn't a revolution, but it was progress, and it started conversations. Madison had been interviewed by 3 regional magazines about body positivity and business. Her story, Fat Woman Humiliated, Then Triumphs, had resonated far beyond Paradise Cove. She received emails weekly from women sharing their own experiences, asking for advice. She'd started a blog, then a podcast. Her platform was growing, and with it, her influence. She was becoming the voice she'd needed to hear at 28, at 18, at 8 years old, when boys first made her feel ashamed of taking up space. Sienna had left Paradise Cove. She'd posted one final Instagram message, surprisingly vulnerable, about taking time to work on herself and unlearn toxic patterns. She'd lost some followers, but gained others who appreciated the honesty. Madison had seen her once before she left, at the Grind coffee shop. They'd made eye contact. Sienna had nodded. Madison had nodded back. It wasn't friendship, it probably never would be, but it was peace. The absence of active hostility was its own kind of victory. Madison heard through the grapevine that Sienna was in therapy, that she'd stopped posting thirst traps and started posting about mental health. Maybe she'd find her own version of redemption. Maybe she wouldn't. Madison no longer needed Sienna's story to end any particular way. She'd stopped being the supporting character in someone else's narrative. She was writing her own story now, and it was turning out better than she'd ever imagined possible. Jasmine, Rosa, and Aisha had become Madison's closest friends. They celebrated birthdays together, had weekly beach days, supported each other's dreams. Jasmine's food blog had exploded after Madison helped her with SEO strategy. She now had sponsorship deals and a cookbook contract. Rosa was pursuing her nursing degree to become a nurse practitioner. Aisha had gotten a gallery showing for her artwork. They lifted each other up constantly, celebrating victories and cushioning failures. This was the friendship Madison had always wanted, but never quite found in Chicago. Women who saw all of her, accepted all of her, loved all of her. They'd created their own chosen family, bound not by blood, but by shared experience and fierce loyalty. When one of them struggled, they all rallied. When one succeeded, they all celebrated. This was what community was supposed to feel like. Madison had found her tribe, she'd found her home. Kai proposed on the beach where they'd first spoken, on the 6-month anniversary of that conversation. He didn't make a big production of it. They were swimming together at sunset, floating on their backs, watching the sky change colors. "Marry me," he said simply. Madison turned to look at him, treading water. "What?" Marry me, build this life with me, make it official. I know it's fast by conventional standards, but conventional standards are overrated. I love you. I want forever with you. So marry me." Madison laughed, then cried, then kissed him with salt water streaming down both their faces. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. They swam back to shore and made love in the outdoor shower behind his grandmother's house. Their house now. They ordered pizza and ate it on the floor because they'd donated most of the furniture to make room for new pieces they'd chosen together. They called their families to share the news. Madison's mother cried with joy. Her father said, "About damn time you found someone who deserves you." The wedding was planned for the following summer, a beach ceremony at sunset, small and intimate, just family and close friends. No wedding diet, no panic about photographs, no stress about fitting into a dress. Madison chose a gown that celebrated her curves, worked with a designer who specialized in plus-size bridal wear. She felt beautiful in it, genuinely, completely beautiful. Not beautiful for a fat girl or beautiful despite her size. Just beautiful, full stop. Kai couldn't stop touching her when she modeled it for him against the designer's protests about bad luck. "I make my own luck," he said, kissing Madison's neck, "and I'm the luckiest man alive." The planning process was joyful instead of stressful. They chose a menu of foods they loved, not foods they thought they should serve. They hired a band that played the music they wanted to dance to. Every decision reflected who they actually were, not who they thought they should be. It was revolutionary in its authenticity. Madison's business continued to thrive. She'd specialized in helping companies develop authentic, body-inclusive marketing strategies. Her client list included major brands looking to move beyond tokenism toward genuine representation. She commanded premium rates and was selective about who she worked with, turning down anyone who wanted her to rubber stamp performative diversity. She'd become known in her industry as someone who would tell you the truth, even if you didn't want to hear it. Her podcast, Taking Up Space, had over 100,000 subscribers. She interviewed activists, artists, entrepreneurs, all people who'd been told they were too much or not enough, who'd claimed their right to exist anyway. The show was raw, honest, sometimes uncomfortable. People loved it. She'd been approached about a book deal. She was considering it, working on a proposal in the early mornings before client calls. Her story was still being written, and she was the only one holding the pen. One afternoon, a teenage girl approached Madison on the beach. She was maybe 16, obviously self-conscious in her modest one piece, her soft body hidden under an oversized t-shirt despite the heat. "Are you Madison Hayes?" she asked shyly. "I am. I listened to your podcast, the episode about owning your space. It helped me. I've been coming to this beach my whole life, but this is the first summer I've actually gone in the water because of you." She paused. "I just wanted to say thank you." Madison's eyes filled with tears. This was why she did it, all of it. The vulnerability of sharing her story, the discomfort of being public about her experiences, the risk of putting herself out there. For this girl, and for all the girls like her who needed to see someone existing unapologetically in a body society deemed unacceptable. "Thank you for telling me," Madison said, "and thank you for being brave. The world needs more women who refuse to hide." The house had become a gathering place. Madison and Kai hosted dinner parties, beach barbecues, casual Sunday brunches that lasted until evening. Their home was always full of people, laughter, conversation. Kai taught surf lessons from their beach, building his youth program into something substantial. They'd gotten grant funding, corporate sponsorships, enough to provide equipment and lessons to kids who could never otherwise afford them. They were building something together, not just a relationship, but a legacy, a way of being in the world that made space for more people. One evening, sitting on their porch with wine and watching the sunset, Kai said, "Did you ever imagine this? When you first came here, running away from Chicago, heartbroken and exhausted, did you imagine it could turn into this?" Madison thought about it. "No," she said honestly. "I couldn't have imagined this. I didn't know this kind of happiness was possible." "Neither did I," Kai said, pulling her close. "Neither did I." Madison returned to Chicago only once, 6 months after moving to Paradise Cove. She met her old colleagues for drinks, visited her favorite restaurants, walked through her old neighborhood. It felt like visiting a museum of her past life. Interesting, but no longer home. Her friends were happy for her, but confused. "You gave up your career for a guy?" one asked. Madison smiled. "I gave up a career that was killing me for a life that makes me happy." Kai's part of that, but he's not all of it. "I have a career. It's just on my terms now." That friend didn't understand. Madison realized she didn't need her to. She was done explaining herself, done justifying her choices, done seeking approval from people who'd never truly seen her anyway. She packed the last of her belongings, shipped them to Paradise Cove, and flew home, really home, the next day. She never looked back. On Madison's 30th birthday, 2 years after that first humiliating day on the beach, she stood in front of a crowd at the Paradise Cove Community Center. Marcus Martinez had asked her to speak at a town hall about inclusive tourism. She wore a sleeveless dress that showed her soft arms, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders, her body unapologetic in its space. "2 years ago," she began, "I came to this town as a visitor. I was humiliated for existing in a fat body on your beach, and I almost let that send me home, let it confirm every negative belief I had about myself. But something happened instead. I found people who saw my humanity before my size. I found love, I found community, I found myself, and Paradise Cove became my home." She paused, looking at the crowd, locals and tourists, people of all sizes and backgrounds. "We have a choice about what kind of place this is, exclusive or inclusive, judgmental or welcoming. I hope we choose welcome." The applause was thunderous. Madison stepped down from the podium and walked straight into Kai's arms. This was her life now, using her voice, making space, loving boldly. She'd transformed from the woman hiding in her cottage to the woman standing in her truth. The humiliation that almost broke her became the catalyst that remade her. She'd reclaimed the beach, the story herself. Your body is not your limitation. It's your home. Your voice matters. Your story isn't over. Whether you're size 2 or 22, you deserve to take up space, to be loved, to exist without apology. Madison learned that lesson on a beach in Paradise Cove. Where will you learn yours? If this story moved you, drop a comment below sharing your thoughts. Subscribe for more stories of women who refuse to be small, who claim their space, who transform pain into power. I'll see you in the next one.